Produced on a total budget of $720 million, the Toy Story films have grossed more than $3.3 billion worldwide, becoming the 19th highest grossing franchise and the 3rd highest grossing animated franchise. Have you ever wondered why we have just become so attracted to this franchise even all these years later? Well, it might have something to do with Disney's magic touch, but there's a lot more to it than that, with the kind of story it is and where it came from. Here are the top 10 reasons why this franchise has been so successful. For starters, the theme of the film represents friendship and sharing. Being a child, they were attracted to the idea of toys coming to life. The targeted age group was kids who were still with dolls and such and knew they had a big imagination, and a lot of children who role-play with dolls make them speak and give their own personality. Some with attitude and some with very big personalities. A team of researchers from Cardiff University has used neuroscience for the first time to explore the positive impact doll play has on children, bringing to light new evidence that doll play activates brain regions that allows children to develop empathy and social information processing skills even when playing by themselves. This evidence was brought up in 2020, but in watching children and having played with dolls or even action figures at some point, you can remember that giving each of them their own personality was very normal. So when this film came out, it was very relatable, and children and adults even recognized the behavior of toys. Of course, in real life, they would be coming to life, but we imagined it at one point. The film also gained its popularity through technology itself. Toy Story was the first film that introduced computer animation, and people were fascinated by this idea. If you look at computer animation versus hand-drawn side by side, you can see the difference, and being this was the generation of 3D animation, so to speak, given its visuals. Of course, with a film like this came challenges, that of which was animating the humans, because as we know how humans walk and talk and move, it was difficult to put a face to anyone, much less Andy. That's why we almost only see Andy's face and not his mother's or kids from the party, because it was too difficult to put multiple faces to multiple people. They simply wouldn't have had the time. Aside from the story and animation aspect of everything, the entirety of the project was inspiring. Hearing the stories of the animators and creators and how they had to think outside the box to make the story come to life, the idea that toys could come to life and wander around and live their own lives outside of their owners, but giving themselves the mission of making their owner happy and being there for them when having dependence on them as well. With the story of Jessie, we understood the impact that owners can have on toys. After the release of Toy Story, these days it may sound obvious to say that part of Pixar's success has been the appeal and emotion of the stories the studio tells, but 20 years ago, that didn't necessarily have to be the case. Pixar's contract with Disney had come as a result of its technological prowess after all. The decision to put the story first was a key one, and it would power the next 2 decades of the company's creativity. After the success of Toy Story, my belief is that the creators got smarter and realized that the story could be stretched out in terms of collecting more revenue, but at the same time, continuing the story of Andy and the toys with a different situation and new obstacle. We learned of different toys and the reality of being new, not all of them having an owner or a kid, some just living their lives on a shelf for display. With every new film they released, the box office numbers grew higher and higher, and with every new film, the original audience slowly grew up with Andy. We just didn't realize it until the 3rd installment.
So long, partner.
And speaking of which, Toy Story hit us all right in the heartstrings. When Toy Story first came out in 1995, none of us as kids were thinking about when Andy would grow up, and just the fact that we would grow up with him, and seeing him say goodbye to his toys, and not just tossing them in bags, but caring about them and wanting them to go to another trusted person who would extend their lives. Toy Story 3 alone made over $1 billion, and one of the reasons Toy Story 3 resonated so strongly with this original audience was because, much like Andy and his toys, they were leaving the familiar behind and heading into exciting yet unknown territory. Toy Story 4 is another film that can be loved by all ages, but it also grows up with the original audience. With an average rating from Rotten Tomatoes at nearly 100%, it's no wonder they created multiple sequels to this film. Not only is the franchise easily recognized from images of certain toys or Andy, but from the awards the film itself have been given. From a BAFTA award in 1997 for Best Achievement in Special Visual Effects, and an Annie Award in pretty much every category, Toy Story was proven to have its best interest at heart and a well-written story that was given time and thought in order for it to be what it became. The film has also made itself into a classic, with easy recognizable characters, a strong storyline, fun characters without a true antagonist, only obstacles to get through with upbeat characters. And not only is this story a classic, but it is the whole reason Pixar exists today. Speaking of 1995, it was the highest grossing film of that year alone. It was mesmerizing to the audience, and the more people that saw it, the more sales that came up, as well as popularity. $363 million was a lot back then, and once that number was hit, the company and creators knew the potential of the franchise and got to work quickly on another story, but not too quickly to where it was rushed and the story wasn't good. Not only was this a different company than coming straight from Disney, but it wasn't a musical. Producer John Lasseter did not want to make Toy Story into a musical, as he felt that it would make the film feel less genuine. This was believed to be a good decision because while it was risky, people weren't expecting no music in it, but was delighted in the story without trying to force songs into it. Even with all these years later, Toy Story is widely credited with influencing the regular production across other major studios of computer animation films. As the highest grossing film released in 1995, it demonstrated that computer animated films could be lucrative. When it came to Toy Story, the animators didn't have much choice but to follow Disney's lead. No one had ever tried to make a feature-length film with 3D animation, so the technological capabilities guided much of their creative process. Pixar's success started because of Toy Story and continues to not break the cycle of impressing people with each and every film that comes out, even if certain people are not on the team anymore. But what are your thoughts on how the company is performing as of recently?